People often think of meditation as a state of transcendence, an instant feeling that takes you away from all the worries of everyday life. But in reality, meditation isn't an escape. It's a journey back to yourself, amidst the chaos and imperfection of the present moment. I remember the first time I sat down and tried to immerse myself in my breath. Just for a few seconds, the sounds outside seemed to grow louder, creeping through every crack in the door. Even the distant sound of a horn was enough to startle me. Confusing thoughts suddenly surged, as if both the world inside and outside were rushing in without any restraint. At first, I felt uncomfortable and frustrated, but then a gentle reminder echoed from deep within my mind. Don't fight it, just let it be. So I tried to return to my breath, each short inhale and exhale, each sensation of air passing through my nostrils. My mind still raced like a child who wouldn't sit still. But this time, I didn't chase after it, nor did I scold or force it. Instead, I gently called it back, like calling an old friend, softly, patiently, and without judgment. Someone once told me that our minds are like flowing water. If we try to stir it, it will remain murky, never clearing up. But if we leave it still, little by little, the dust will settle at the bottom, restoring the stillness it once had. And yet, to achieve such a moment of quiet, sometimes I had to sit for hours, feeling the unease in every passing moment. Still, each time I brought my mind back, I felt a small joy, like light streaming through a crack in the door on a quiet morning. This joy wasn't because I had meditated better, but because I was learning to accept myself, both the chaotic and the peaceful parts, without the need to fix or deny them. There were times on a tiring day when I could only sit for a few brief minutes, but it felt like taking a sip of cool water in the middle of the desert. Just by focusing on my breath, I realized I no longer needed to chase after the past or the future. My mind might not be completely still, but I was slowly learning to master it, rather than letting it pull me along with my emotions. This journey at times isn't about finding answers, but about learning to face imperfection. And you know what? In that imperfection, I found myself. Just a moment of returning, just a deep breath, is enough to remind me that peace isn't far away. It's always waiting right inside you. There were days when I was so exhausted that I didn't want to do anything, yet I wouldn't allow myself to stop. Like a person rowing a boat in a strong current, I tried my best to keep going, thinking that as long as I kept rowing, everything would be fine. But the more I rowed, the more it felt like I was sinking. Blind efforts not only drained me, but also made the situation more tangled. Then one day, I remembered the words of an old teacher. When you're drained, don't try to fight the storm. Anchor your boat and wait for the waves to calm before moving forward. At that time, I didn't fully understand the meaning of those words. But now, amidst the fatigue and confusion, I realize stopping isn't failure. Sometimes stopping is the only way to move forward. I began learning how to stop, like a beginner learning to walk. Stopping isn't about ignoring difficulties or avoiding responsibilities. It's about reconnecting with the strength within. There were afternoons when, instead of forcing myself to get work done, I stepped outside, breathed in the air, and quietly observed the changing sky. There were nights when, instead of tossing and turning with jumbled thoughts, I sat down and listened to the sound of my own breath. And strangely, in those moments, I felt a refreshing sense of renewal slowly returning. The mind, when tired, is like a mirror covered in dust. No matter how hard you try to look, all you see is a distorted, blurred image. But if you leave it alone and gently wipe away the dust bit by bit, the mirror will shine again, revealing the true image. We are the same. Don't rush to make decisions when the mind is clouded, because in those moments, even what seems right can easily become a mistake. I've learned to accept that some days my mind isn't in its best state. That's not a sign of weakness, but a reminder that I need to take care of myself. In those moments, instead of blaming myself, I choose to be gentle with myself, like a dear friend. Once, during a meditation session, I recalled a teaching from a Zen master. Life is full of thorns. We cannot clear the thorns, but we can prepare ourselves with a good pair of shoes. I smiled. Those shoes weren't far away. They lay within the endurance and the capacity of the soul to observe. When the mind becomes awakened, I realize that negative emotions, no matter how strong, are just passing clouds in the sky. My sky has always been there, vast and embracing. Each time I pause to practice mindfulness, I not only refresh my mind, but also open up a new space to perceive problems. Instead of being swept away by anxieties, I observe them like watching a wave, understanding that no matter how big, the wave will eventually dissolve. And in that silence, I gradually find the strength to move forward, no longer led by emotions, but guiding myself through the thorns of everyday life. I once thought that life truly begins only when I resolve all the burdens within, when every pain has disappeared and every setback has been unraveled. But then I realized this is a journey with no end, for the sufferings and challenges in life are like a river that never runs dry. They keep flowing, they keep coming, waiting for no one's permission. One day, in the midst of constant exhaustion, I sat down and quietly watched the stream of thoughts running through my mind. I didn't try to chase them, nor did I blame myself for letting them take over. I simply sat there, breathing, and realized something simple yet profound. I'm still alive. At first, that feeling seemed so ordinary, but the more I listened, the more it felt like a beam of light shining into the darkness. My breath, something I once took for granted, had now become a precious gift. I inhaled deeply, as if holding on to the present, then exhaled, letting go of all unnecessary burdens. And suddenly, in that moment, I understood that happiness isn't something waiting for me at the end of the road, but it's already here, in this breath, in this moment. Once, I heard a story about someone standing on the edge of despair who was reminded, anything is possible, as long as you're still alive. At that moment, those words were like a small flame, lighting hope in the midst of a dark sky. I've been there too, sinking deep into negative emotions, forgetting that as long as there's still a breath, life still holds the chance for change. And now every time I feel lost, I remind myself, I still have this breath, still have the opportunity to begin again. I no longer try to escape from pain or negative emotions. Instead, I let them be present, like uninvited guests, and slowly use mindfulness to observe them. I realize that negative emotions are just temporary waves. No matter how big, they cannot drown the entire ocean within me. With each breath, I feel myself letting go of expectations, of the desires to fix myself. I've learned to be grateful, not just for the good things, but also for the challenges that have helped me grow. It is in that peace that I realize happiness doesn't need to be sought, for it has never left. I just wasn't awake enough to notice it. I used to chase after visions of happiness, grand achievements, perfect joys like in books or movies. But the more I ran, the more I realized I had overlooked the simplest things, the things closest to me, like my breath, laughter, or the presence of a loved one. Life is like a vast garden, yet I was too focused on the weeds, forgetting to appreciate the flowers blooming right beside me. One morning, in the calm of the day, I sat on the doorstep, took a deep breath, and listened to the beat of my heart. In that moment, I realized, I'm still here, still healthy, still alive. A wave of emotion surged within me, as if I had just found something precious I had long lost. Just by feeling the breath flowing within me, I realized I have enough to be grateful, enough to be happy. But humans are strange. We easily focus on what displeases us, letting it carry us through the entire day. A small scratch on the painting of life is enough to make us forget all the beautiful colors around us. I was once like that, letting small difficulties dominate, overlooking the hundreds of good things I already had. Through time and practice, I learned how to train my mind to pause, to observe, and to appreciate what I have and am experiencing. Each time my mind wandered, I gently brought it back, without judgment, without force. And little by little, I began to realize that I always have a choice to focus on the difficulties or to center on the conditions for happiness. Happiness and suffering are truly not far apart. They are only a breath away. As long as you are aware, you can shift from the shore of worry to the shore of peace. I've realized that the shore I stand on completely depends on how I choose to view life. And the miracle is that no matter which shore you're on, you can change direction at any time with just one moment of awakening. Someone once asked me how to overcome life's disappointments. I simply replied, step onto your own boat. That boat is the moments you return to your breath, to mindful steps. Don't just stand from afar looking at the boat. Don't just dream of the shore of peace without daring to step forward. Because only when you truly board the boat and start rowing will happiness begin to appear before your eyes. Now, each day I remind myself that happiness isn't a distant destination. It lies in every conscious breath, in each moment I choose to focus on the good. And when I do this, difficulties and disappointments suddenly seem small, as light as a passing breeze. I no longer let them cause me suffering, but I learn to live with them as a natural part of life. I used to think that in order to feel peace in relationships, I first had to change the other person. There were times when I became fixated on their flaws, an unintended comment, an action that didn't meet my expectations, and let these small things cloud the light of affection. But then, life taught me that it's how I perceive others that truly matters. One time, in the quiet moment after a tense argument, I asked myself, have I truly been fair to them? Have I ever looked deeply at the good things they bring? The answer made me pause. I realized that the disappointments were just a small part compared to the many wonderful things they had done for me, the gestures of care, the moments of sharing that I once took for granted. When I began to shift my perspective, reminding myself to focus on their strengths rather than their flaws, I found everything becoming lighter. It wasn't about denying the truth or hiding the pain, but about choosing to focus on what's worth appreciating. In this way, I slowly freed myself from the endless cycle of negativity and realized that everyone has their own value, and they are doing their best in their own way. Suffering in relationships, it turns out, isn't caused by others, but often stems from how we cling to negative emotions: anger, disappointment, or doubt. Each time these emotions arise, I've learned to stop, not letting them lead me. I name my emotions as if separating them from myself. This is anger. This is doubt. Strangely, just naming the emotion, I feel like I've put down a heavy burden. Instead of trying to push negative emotions away, I choose to face them. I quietly observe them, like someone sitting by the river, watching the floodwaters flow by without trying to stop them. That feeling is like opening my heart to accept what's happening, letting the emotions pass naturally rather than forcing myself to always be strong or perfect. Over time, I realized a simple yet profound truth. Peace isn't the absence of negative emotions, but the ability to coexist with them peacefully. Only by accepting them can I truly transform them into understanding, patience, and sometimes love. In relationships, focusing on the good not only helps me appreciate others more, but it also allows me to be gentler with myself. I no longer expect others to be perfect because I am not perfect either. This small shift in perspective opened the door for me to find peace, not through controlling others, but through the freedom within my own mind. There are times when the anger within me flares up like an unexpected fire, fierce and hard to control. A single comment, a small action from someone else is enough to ignite that flame. But then, in the quiet moments that follow, I realized that the anger didn't come from them, but from me. From emotions that hadn't been understood, wounds that hadn't healed, and unresolved unrest that had been lingering for so long. The first time I learned to examine my emotions, it was both unfamiliar and profound. I sat down, took a deep breath, and felt the fire of anger inside. I didn't try to extinguish it, nor did I run away from it. I simply sat with it, watching it burn. And then questions began to arise. Why am I angry? Is it really because of what they said, or is it simply because I'm exhausted today? I realized that when my energy is depleted, the world suddenly feels heavier. Words that would otherwise seem harmless can easily turn into daggers. Are they really as bad as I think? I began to wonder if I was seeing them through the lens of bias, a lens tinted by unmet expectations or by past wounds I hadn't let go of. And then, in a moment of awakening, I saw them, a human being, imperfect, but not deserving of so much negative emotion from me. I realized that anger, like a wave, rises and then recedes. If I throw myself into that wave, it will sweep me away. But if I stand still, simply observing, the wave will dissipate on its own. This process of examining my emotions helped me understand that emotions are not enemies. They are silent teachers, pointing out the deepest parts of myself. I began to reflect on the times I was easily shaken by the words or actions of others. In those moments, I saw the fragility within me, a small bowl of water easily made salty by a pinch of salt. And I realized that to avoid being tainted, I needed to become like a river, a vast and embracing inner world. This river doesn't come from trying to avoid emotions, but from accepting, understanding, and growing through each moment of anger. The miracle happened when I learned to not identify with my emotions. I imagined myself as an audience member sitting in a movie theater, watching a film about myself. The anger was a scene in the movie, but it was not me. When I no longer saw anger as my essence, I was no longer controlled by it. On the contrary, I felt freer, stronger. Once, during a tense conversation when anger began to rise, I tried stepping back, both mentally and emotionally. I observed it like a passing cloud and realized that behind the anger were fears, wounds, and even love. Separating myself from the emotion didn't make me cold. It helped me see both myself and the other person more clearly. Through these moments of examination, I understood that peace is not the absence of emotions, but the ability to perceive them clearly. Emotions, whether anger or sorrow, do not define who I am. They are just waves, and I am the ocean. I remember a time when anger flared up, I unconsciously closed my heart, thinking that it was a way to protect myself. I became silent, distancing myself from those who had hurt me, telling myself they will realize their mistake when they see how much I'm suffering. But strangely, the pain didn't lessen, it only grew bigger. It felt like I was building a wall, but within that wall, I was imprisoning myself. What awakened me was realizing that punishing myself by causing myself pain never changed the other person. Sometimes they didn't even notice that I was suffering, and even if they did, they couldn't understand my intention. Instead, I just made myself more tired, allowing anger and hurt to sink deeper into my soul. Looking back, I see clearly the cause. The 4 factors, each one, quietly pushed me into a spiral of suffering. Not recognizing my emotions. I didn't realize that anger was just a small part of me and I could choose how to face it. Instead, I let it consume me, turning a temporary emotion into a lasting reality. Not accepting my emotions. Instead of confronting the pain, I avoided it. I thought that avoiding it would make everything easier. But in reality, it only made the negative emotions last longer. It's like a wound that is covered up. It can't heal, only inflates. Blaming others. I used to ask myself, why did they do this to me? But never asked, why did I let this hurt me? I gave others too much control over my emotions, forgetting that the root of suffering comes from how I react. Identifying with the pain. I didn't just feel hurt, I thought I was the pain itself. The anger and frustration no longer felt like passing emotions. They became a core part of me, making me forget the peaceful light that has always existed within me. In those moments, I realized something important. Suffering is not a fixed state. It is a flow, and I can choose to stand still and let it pass. When I began to turn inward, I saw that the light of awareness was still there, waiting for me to reach it. That light doesn't come from the outside. It doesn't come from an apology, from someone else's change, or from anything I expect. It resides within me, in letting go, in the ability to view everything with compassion. I realized that the things that don't go my way cannot hurt me unless I allow them to. Gradually, I learned not to overreact to the things that upset me. Instead of nurturing anger, I practiced letting go. I started seeing everything with a gentler attitude, like an observer from outside, no longer allowing emotions to carry me away. And truly, when I stopped resisting, stopped clinging to expectations, peace began to gently seep into my soul. Someone once asked me, how can I avoid being hurt by others? I simply replied, stop waiting and expecting from them. When your mind is stable, peace will naturally arise. And I believe that only by letting go can we truly free ourselves. I once thought that suffering came from the outside, from events, people, or circumstances that didn't go as planned. But the more I went through life's ups and downs, the more I realized that suffering doesn't arise on its own and it doesn't belong to anyone else. It sprouts from the way I react, from the rejection and refusal to accept reality. There were times when I felt like the whole world was against me. Broken expectations, hurtful words, uncontrollable losses. All of it felt like a strong wind blowing through, leaving a cold emptiness inside. But when I sat down and listened to myself, I began to understand. This pain isn't from out there. It comes from within me, from attachment, from anger, and from unmet desires. Greed, anger, and ignorance. Three states that everyone experiences are not enemies, but they can easily become the root of suffering if we don't recognize and control them. Greed, when we cling to what we want even when it no longer serves us. Anger, when we resist things that go against our wishes, despite knowing that everything in life changes. Ignorance, when we let our minds become clouded, lacking the clarity to understand that life is a flow, not a fixed destination. I once let myself be swept away by these negative emotions, not realizing that I was losing my ability to control my soul. I blamed others, complained about circumstances, only to forget that the real cause was the weakness within. When the mind is pulled outside, I easily became a victim of myself, a prisoner of emotions I had created. But then a shift occurred when I began practicing observing my mind. I no longer reacted immediately when emotions arose. Instead, I turned inward, viewing myself as an observer from the outside. I saw that anger was not me. It was just a fleeting state, like clouds passing through the sky. I realized that unnecessary desires were binding me, and I began to learn how to let go. The first time I practiced mindfulness, it felt like the fire in my heart was extinguished. I returned to my breath, allowing my mind to settle, no longer chasing after the chaotic thoughts. In that awareness, I clearly saw that the disappointments, no matter how great, were just temporary phenomena. They had no power over me unless I allowed them to. This practice didn't make the difficulties disappear, but it changed the way I perceived them. I no longer saw difficulties as enemies, but as teachers helping me grow. I began to see that every emotion, even the negative ones, has value, as long as I know how to not identify myself with them. When my mind became steady enough, I realized that suffering doesn't come from what happens, but from how I react to it. If I choose to let go of attachment, to view everything through the light of mindfulness, then peace is always present, even in the most difficult moments. Life cannot avoid disappointments, but how I face them is what truly matters. There are times when I feel like my life is a small boat in the middle of the ocean, easily capsized by the stormy waves. Difficulties come like fierce storms, making me lose my direction and sense of control. Those are the moments I realize that I've forgotten to care for my inner world, forgotten to take time to return to myself, to nourish the mindfulness that is the anchor, keeping the boat steady against the storms. When everything seems to be beyond my control, I learn to stop, take a deep breath, and remind myself, return. Not to a place, but back inside, where I can reconnect with the peace that has always been there. But I also understand that this peace doesn't come naturally. It needs to be nurtured every day, like a small flame that needs to be protected from strong winds. If I let that flame die, I'll easily fall when life becomes harsh. For me, mindfulness practice isn't something distant or idealistic. It starts with the simplest things, a conscious breath, a moment of pause amidst the chaos, or even just sitting still to listen to my heartbeat. Those moments, though seemingly small, are the building blocks of a strong inner house, helping me stand firm against any challenge. I realize that the difficulties and adversities in life are precious lessons. They remind me of the value of mindfulness practice, helping me understand that when the mind is at peace, I can view disappointments from a different perspective. Instead of seeing them as obstacles, I began to view them as teachers, helping me cultivate patience, the ability to let go, and compassion for others and for myself. For me, meditation is not a journey to find an ideal state or to achieve something. It is about letting go of expectations, letting go of the need to be perfect, and accepting everything as it is. When the mind is unsettled, I learn to sit with my own chaos, not rushing to push it away. When the mind is calm, I simply acknowledge that tranquility without adding excitement or prolonged expectations. I once thought that acceptance meant resignation, bowing down to unwanted things. But through life's lessons, I realized that acceptance is not surrender. It is a delicate art, a way of living where the soul is no longer wounded by the storms of life. Life is like a river, flowing through both quiet banks and turbulent rapids. When I resist the flow, trying to control it, I only wear myself out. But when I learn to relax and let the water flow naturally, I realize that I can still stand firm, no longer being swept away. This acceptance is not about agreeing with or supporting the things that don't go as expected, but it is a reminder. I don't have to suffer because of things beyond my control. When I stop resisting and look at everything from a calm distance, my mind slowly relaxes, and in that quiet space, I realize that each adversity carries a lesson for my growth. I remember times when life didn't unfold as I had hoped, an opportunity lost, an incomplete relationship, or unexpected difficulties that suddenly appeared. At first, I let them knock me down, feeling like a victim of fate. But then, when I stopped and asked myself, what is this teaching me? I began to see a deeper meaning in what seemed like nothing but suffering. These challenges, it turns out, are not meant to make me fall, but to encourage me to look deeper within myself, to recognize unnecessary desires and the expectations I have unintentionally placed on everything. When I let go of those expectations, life suddenly feels lighter. I no longer demand that everything go smoothly or be perfect, but I learn to appreciate even the things that don't go as planned. Acceptance does not mean passively enduring. It is an active state where I maintain calmness to face everything. Instead of reacting strongly or letting negative emotions carry me away, I've learned to step back, observe things as they are, and approach them with a stronger mindset. I've realized that life's adversities are like headwinds. They may slow us down, but they also help us adjust our sails to go farther. It is in these difficult moments that I learn to listen to my inner self, building an inner strength that nothing can shake. Life will always have its share of blessings mixed with disappointments, but when I accepted that both are inevitable parts of life, my soul became lighter. I was no longer swayed by successes, failures, or losses, but instead viewed every experience as a step in the journey of learning and growth. And most importantly, I learned to accept myself, both the strong and the weak parts, the successes and the mistakes. When I stopped resisting who I am, peace began to permeate every breath, every moment. This is not surrender, but a way to live fully with reality, embracing everything as it is. I still remember a time in my life when everything seemed to fall apart. The plans I had placed my trust in, relationships that were once my strongholds, and even my belief in myself, all vanished like dust in the wind. In the midst of that inner storm, I tried every way to escape the feeling of pain, blaming circumstances, blaming others, or even trying to cover up the hurt with temporary distractions. But the more I tried to escape, the deeper I felt myself sinking into darkness. Then one day, in the midst of despair, I realized there was nowhere left to cling to, no escape to run from. I was forced to stop. In that moment, I began to do something I had never considered before: turn inward and quietly observe myself. At first, facing the pain was not easy. Negative emotions like anger, blame, and disappointment surged in like a huge wave. But instead of trying to resist, I tried sitting still, watching them as one would watch a stream of water pass by. And gradually, I realized that simply observing my emotions helped me break free from their control. They were just passing states, not who I am. I began to understand that suffering is not the enemy. It is like a strict teacher, forcing me to look at myself, forcing me to let go of expectations, illusions of control. When everything around me collapsed, I discovered a profound truth. The path out of suffering does not lie in changing the circumstances, but in changing the way I perceive myself and the world. The challenges and adversities have made me stop and ask myself, who am I without the things I once clung to? What truly matters? And in that stillness, I found a strength I didn't know I had. The strength that comes from acceptance and letting go. Many people say that suffering makes our hearts close, but for me, it became an open door. When I learned to face suffering, instead of running away from it, I found myself becoming stronger yet gentler at the same time. I began to understand that in life, no one can avoid loss or pain, but it is the way we face them that determines whether we find peace. Suffering, after all, is not a punishment. It is a wake-up call, reminding me that I cannot control everything, that there are limits I must accept. And strangely, when I stopped trying to fight those limits, I found myself freer. I was no longer caught in the whirlwind of negative emotions, but I learned to let them pass, like the wind through vast fields. It is through those moments of hitting rock bottom that I came to understand the value of mindfulness, the value of living fully in the present without being disturbed by the past or the future. The most painful moments turned out to be the most precious lessons, helping me open my heart, learn to live more peacefully, and love more deeply. Now, When facing challenges, I no longer see them as things to overcome at all costs, but as opportunities to reflect, to grow, and to continue the journey back to myself. For true peace, I've realized, doesn't lie in the absence of difficulties, but in how I choose to face them. I once thought that suffering was something to be eliminated, an enemy to fight. But now, looking back at the years that have passed, I realize that it is the pain that has shaped me, that has taught me how to live more deeply and fully. Suffering, though no one wishes for it, brings lessons that happiness could never teach. The times of distance, the moments of feeling lost which seemed impossible to overcome, were when I realized the value of the things that seemed so small. A simple morning with a loved one, an honest conversation, all of these things, in the light of suffering, became incredibly precious. It is through the darkness that I learned to appreciate the light. Suffering is like a silent teacher, not speaking much, but each lesson it leaves is deeply engraved in my heart. When I went through losses, I learned to let go of stubbornness. When I faced setbacks, I learned to rise again with a stronger heart, yet one that is more compassionate and forgiving. The most profound lesson suffering has taught me is this: happiness is not something grand, but resides in the very simple moments. Just being able to sit together, to talk, or simply to feel the presence of a loved one, that is an irreplaceable happiness. After experiencing pain, I no longer care to argue over right or wrong, no longer hold on to small things, because I understand that separation is the most frightening thing of all. I also realize that we don't have to wait for suffering to recognize the value of happiness. Mindfulness, the ability to see and appreciate what we have, is the path to avoid the harsh lessons that suffering brings. But if mindfulness hasn't arrived in time and suffering appears, we must accept it as a part of the journey of growth. There are times when I want to tell suffering, "Thank you for the lessons, but please go a little further." I no longer invite it in, but if it does come, I am ready to welcome it. Not with fear, but with an open heart, knowing that it brings an opportunity for me to change and grow. In reality, suffering is not a fixed entity. It doesn't come from what happens, but from how I react to what doesn't go as planned. When I learn to stop resisting reality, to accept everything as it is, suffering gradually disappears. Not because the difficulties are no longer there, but because they no longer have the power to hurt me. Now, I no longer identify myself as a person in pain. I understand that suffering is just a temporary state, a cloud passing through the vast sky of my soul. How I choose to face it, calmly accepting or resisting it in suffering, is what truly matters. Every day, I remind myself, cherish the happiness of the present, for it is never something to take for granted. And when I look at life from a gentler perspective, I find peace even in the greatest of adversities. Suffering may come, but it no longer defines me. After everything, I am the one who chooses how to live. I once thought that life was merely a series of tasks and goals to accomplish: studying, working, building a career, and then starting a family. But gradually, I realized that in the rush of it all, I had forgotten the most important thing: myself. Like a field that is never allowed to rest, my soul became barren, losing its freshness, and I couldn't understand why I felt empty amidst the achievements I had attained. Life is not a painting entirely made of dark colors, but it contains challenges, like strong winds shaking the trees. These difficulties do not come to make us fall, but to remind us that we need to stop, to take care of our souls, to return inward and seek peace. Just like the plum blossom must endure the cold winter before it blooms, we too must go through hardships to grow and understand the true value of happiness. I realize that just as the body needs food and rest to stay healthy, the soul does too. The soul needs to be nourished with mindfulness, with peaceful moments in nature, or through positive, loving relationships. But in modern life, we often neglect this need. We become swept up in work, responsibilities, and goals to the point where we no longer take the time to stop and ask ourselves, how am I feeling? Am I truly okay? Sometimes, what we need most is not to add more, but to take away, to remove unnecessary pressures, to let go of excessive concerns. We need to create a space for ourselves, a place where we can listen to our own being. It could be a small corner of a room, a morning walk in the park, or a trip to immerse ourselves in nature. These moments, though brief, offer us the chance to return, to recognize our emotions, both joy and sorrow, to understand, to accept, and to transform them into positive energy. Today's younger generation seems to be living in an endless cycle, chasing goals defined by society as success. But when we focus solely on the external and forget about our inner world, we easily become fatigued and vulnerable. If we don't take time to develop our inner self, we carry unresolved wounds, unhealed grief, and unaddressed anxieties, which affect both our relationships and the way we face life's challenges. I realize that caring for the soul is not just for overcoming suffering, but also for living more fully. It's the way to savor every moment of the present, to connect with the world around us without being swept away by pressure or worry. Every day, when I sit down, take a deep breath, and feel the life within me, I feel renewed. These are not extravagant moments, but essential ones for me to continue my life journey. Growth isn't just about intellect, talent, or wisdom. It's also about nurturing the soul. An uncared for soul becomes weak and lacks the strength to face challenges in relationships or life. When I realized this, I began to reconsider my role, not just as a worker, but as a friend, a father, a husband. To love and care for others, I first need to learn how to love and care for myself. The soul, like a garden, needs to be nurtured every day, and when I take time to care for it, I realize that life becomes gentler, less harsh. Challenges no longer feel like burdens, but opportunities for me to grow and live with an open heart and a peaceful soul. I believe that no matter how far we may have strayed from ourselves, there is always a path back. Giving ourselves the chance to return is not a luxury, but a necessity. A reminder that the soul, like the body, needs care and healing. And if you are feeling lost or weary, see it as an invitation to start anew, to open a new chapter in your life. When facing difficulties such as depression or a mental health crisis, the first step is to have the courage to acknowledge them. We often fear or feel ashamed when confronting our inner wounds. But remember, realizing that we need help is not a sign of weakness, but an act of courage. You don't have to carry it all alone. Open your heart to receive support from loved ones and professionals, those who can walk with you and guide you on your healing journey. Take time to reflect and recognize your current state. Sit down, listen to your emotions, and ask yourself, how am I feeling? What is causing me suffering? Facing negative emotions, though difficult, is the crucial first step in releasing them. Identifying the wounds helps you find ways to heal. This journey requires patience, but each step is valuable. Caring for the soul isn't just about seeking emotional comfort, but also requires concrete actions. Physical exercise. The body and mind go hand in hand. A healthy body will help the mind recover more easily. Start with simple activities like walking, jogging, swimming, or even try boxing to release negative energy. You don't need to push yourself from the start, just 5 minutes a day and gradually increase over time. Sweating not only helps you feel lighter, but is also an effective way to release tension. Connect with nature. Find peaceful spaces, a beach, a forest, or even a small park. Nature has the miraculous ability to heal. Listening to the sound of the waves, feeling the breeze, or tending to a small garden can help your soul relax and recharge. If possible, spend at least 12 hours each week immersed in nature. Share and connect. Don't suffer alone. A companion, a support group, or even a trusted stranger can help ease your sense of isolation. Seek out people who are willing to listen without judgment. Expressing your emotions will lighten your load and help you feel a sense of connection on your healing journey. In many cases, relying solely on yourself may not be enough to escape mental crises. Seek out mental health professionals for evaluation and guidance. If necessary, don't hesitate to use therapy or medication as support. This is not weakness. It's a way to lay a solid foundation for recovery. The journey of caring for the soul is not only about healing old wounds, but also about building a more meaningful life. Remember, it is through the challenges you've faced that you've come to realize the value of peace. Turning inward and developing your inner world is not something to postpone. You deserve a second chance, a chance to live, not just exist. Although this journey is not easy, each small step, each day will lead you to a better place. Don't rush and don't give up. You are not only healing your soul, but also preparing yourself to receive greater blessings in life. The journey of mental recovery is not a distant destination, but a series of small, persistent, and meaningful steps. Each day you choose to care for yourself, to do something better for your soul, brings you one step closer to inner peace. Building a solid routine. Step out of confined spaces. Staying in a room for too long or being glued to your phone can isolate you and lead to a negative mindset. Open a window to let the light in and spend time outside, even if it's just a few minutes walking around your house. Changing your environment can help you break free from feelings of confinement and bring a sense of renewal. Keep a daily journal. Writing down your feelings, thoughts, and daily activities not only helps you organize your mind, but also serves as a way to converse with yourself. You can write about what you're grateful for, small successes, or even negative emotions. This process will help you identify patterns in your thoughts and behaviors, allowing you to adjust them for a healthier life. Exercise regularly. Physical activity is a great way to release negative energy and improve your mood. Choose activities that suit your physical condition and preferences, such as walking, yoga, swimming, or even trying boxing to relieve stress. Remember, it's not about the duration, but about consistency. Just 15 to 30 minutes of exercise each day can make a significant difference. Nature has a powerful healing ability. If you live near the sea, the forest, or a park, make time to enjoy these spaces. A morning walk on the beach, listening to the sound of the waves, or simply admiring a small garden can help you recharge and feel more at peace. If you're new to meditation, start with short sessions, about 5 to 10 minutes. Don't force yourself into a perfect state of stillness. Instead, focus on your breath and be present in the moment. Meditation isn't about eliminating negative emotions, but about recognizing and gently releasing them. Connecting with positive people is an important part of the healing process. Seek out friends, family, or support groups where you feel safe to share. However, it's important not to become overly dependent on others or share with those who are facing similar struggles, as this could amplify the challenges for both parties. If you feel that personal efforts are not enough, don't hesitate to reach out to mental health professionals. Talking to a psychologist or participating in therapy sessions is an effective way to understand your issues and receive appropriate support. If needed, consider combining medication with expert guidance to assist in the recovery process. Once you feel more stable, you might try participating in longer meditation retreats or intensive therapy courses. These are not only opportunities to learn emotional regulation skills, but also ways to explore yourself on a deeper level, building a stronger connection with your inner self. Mental recovery is a journey that takes time, but every small step brings great value. Be patient with yourself. Every day, every effort you put in will bring about positive change, helping you not only overcome difficulties, but also build a more meaningful life with a resilient soul and a heart full of love.